Okay, you gotta see this. What happens when you mash up a sixth grade math class with stories that are literally thousands of years old? You'd probably think, not much, right? But what we're looking at today is this wild discovery that connects ancient parables directly to, of all things, a number line. It's an equation you would just never see coming. So, let's get right into the core of this fascinating find. We're talking about two worlds that honestly feel like they're from completely different planets. On one side, you've got rational numbers. They're precise, logical, kind of cold, hard facts, fractions and decimals. And then on the other side, these ancient, symbolic, story-driven biblical narratives. They couldn't seem more opposite. One is pure logic. The other is all about allegory and meaning. And that is the big question, isn't it? Because that's what this whole explainer is about. We've actually got our hands on a document that does exactly that. It fuses these two worlds together in probably the last place you would ever think to look. So let's break down what we're actually looking at here. This isn't just some theory. It's a real, honest-to-goodness example of a pretty unique way of teaching. The source material we're digging into is an actual lesson plan. Seriously. It's for a math class, and it's all about teaching sixth graders how to compare rational numbers. You can almost think of it as a case study in just how creative teaching can get. And look, the main goal here is totally standard. This is a core concept in any sixth grade math curriculum. So the what is normal. But the how, well, the method they use to get there is anything but conventional. All right, so here's the million-dollar question. How on earth do you connect these old stories to a number line? How do you actually turn a parable into a point on a graph? Well, it kicks off with a warm-up. The teacher brings up the well-known parable of the lost sheep. It's a story most people have heard, which makes it this perfect, super simple way to ease into the world of fractions. And boom, this is how they do it. It's genius. All of a sudden, that story isn't just a story anymore. It's 1/100th lost and 99/100ths safe. The narrative gets translated into these concrete, visual fractions that students can see and understand immediately. Okay, so after that warm-up with the sheep, the lesson starts to build on the idea. The main part of the class dives a little deeper, asking the students to make a comparison that's a bit more abstract. So the lesson poses this problem. What's greater, 1/3 of King Solomon's wisdom or 1/2 of King Hezekiah's? And just like that, the abstract question of which is bigger, 1/3 or 1/2, becomes this tangible comparison between two famous figures. It literally gives the numbers a personality. And this isn't just a one-off trick for class. The theme carries right on through to the homework. Students are now plotting fractions on a number line that stand for Moses' leadership or Gideon's army. Every single number is anchored to a story, which just helps drill the concept home. All of this brings up a pretty big question. Why? Why go through all this effort to connect ancient stories to simple fractions? Well, the answer gets at a really powerful idea in learning. So this isn't just some random, quirky idea. It's an actual educational strategy called contextualized learning. And the whole point is to take abstract stuff, like fractions, and ground them in something that feels familiar and interesting. Think about it. Our brains are just wired for stories. When you attach a number to a character or a plot, you're not just making it more fun, you're basically giving that number an anchor in your long-term memory. And the method itself follows this really clear, simple pattern. You start with a story everyone knows. You pull out the numbers. You apply a math tool, like the number line. And then you draw a conclusion. It's a very deliberate process that's basically building a bridge from the world of storytelling to the world of math. So after taking apart this whole lesson plan, what's the big takeaway here? What does this super unique approach to teaching really tell us? At the end of the day, it's really all about changing the experience of learning. For any kid who's ever stared at a page full of fractions and just felt nothing, this method tries to give those numbers a story, a purpose, a meaning that goes way beyond just being symbols on a page. So what this whole lesson plan really shows us is that sometimes the oldest stories we have can be the most powerful tools for understanding brand new ideas. By wrapping abstract numbers in a familiar story, you're not just making math more interesting. You're closing that huge gap between the abstract and the concrete. It kind of proves that a good story might just be the best learning tool there is. And that kind of leaves us with one last thing to think about. Go back in your own head to when you were learning something really tough. What was it?
What was that weird story or that strange analogy that finally made it all click?